So I love this draft because this is something, again, we've been talking about, we've spoke about it, the talent, the turnover that Billy Napier is going through. Again, I'm always going to probably spin things more positive than the negative way because we talk about, hey, where the hot seat, Billy on the hot seat is going to be a topic of conversation this entire year, every single week until it's not one. And part of what this supports the argument of, hey, trusting this process this is supporting the amount of turnover that he's had to deal with, and where Florida ranks. I believe they ranked third. That was behind Miami and A&M overall in your graph, pulling in an ACC team, and A&M, who did experience a ton of turnover. But 81%, 71%, and 65%, basically the entire team that Mullen recruited, is no longer there. So when you really think about how much of a flip of a 180 this team has taken in the last year and a half, and now I believe the top 25 came out, we're ranked 20th, and there's a lot of optimism going into this season. That's where my excitement comes for Billy. Am I right in that thought process, Nick, or does this graph say, Shelton, you're an idiot, shut up?
So with my thought process was watching this Florida team. Yeah, if I don't answer the question, no,
you're good.
My thought process in watching this Florida team was closely these last few years, especially, is just the amount of turnover has been insane. And I know it's a new era with the transfer portal, and we've all looked at it. And I expected the numbers to be higher, but what I wanted to know, and I threw these other schools in, I threw other key teams from the SEC like Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, LSU, Florida State, Miami are also on there as well. Because look, Florida State, what's their strategy been? They've been more portal heavy earlier on than perhaps Florida or some of these other schools, right? What's their strategy look like in terms of recruiting as well? But what you're really seeing is that a lot of these schools are heavily affected. If you go to the end of the article here, I'll give it away here, but Auburn has had 69% of players between 2019 to 2022 leave at some point during their career. And I'm thinking, Shelton, of the, your traditional, you come in as a high school or JUCO recruit and you play a few years at the school, work your way up, become the starter. You're walking out of the tunnel on senior day, like college football has been for all of existence until the recent couple of years here. And you're looking at it here. Yeah, Auburn's had 69% of their roster turnover with their high school recruits. They had one class that was like 17 of 18 guys departed from there. And I think Hunter, the running back's the only one that's still on that team with Hugh Freeze. But if you look at it, all the schools I took, Shelton, the lowest number that I pulled was 48% of Georgia's players have left between 2019 to 2022. So even Georgia's turnover nearly 50% rate. The rest of the schools are closer to 66 and are 60%, and Florida's up there at 66. So Florida has certainly dealt with a little more turnover than others. But I thought it was interesting because a school like Texas A&M, they've had 68 players leave through those 4 years. But because they've recruited so many each cycle, they had 41 stay. So if you look at the number of players that actually stayed at Texas A&M, they're actually keeping more on board than a school like Florida, Miami, Auburn. So schools that are maybe more affected, they have the huge numbers in recruiting classes have really benefited the Aggies to really keep some of those good players on that roster still.
So there's two ways of looking at it because the percentage-wise, it seems closer, but when you look at the quantity, right, with only 26 staying, and that kind of speaks to recruiting. We didn't recruit very well. We didn't build up a very quantitative class to where we could afford the back and forth. That's what this is showing me right here. And Florida State is the only team that in this top 4 that has experienced success, but we can all agree that they've had the most success in the transfer portal out of these 4 teams as well. So they were able to counter that lack of recruiting because their entire mission was the portal. Now, and I've been stating this, and I'm going to die on this hill, that this year they're going to feel the impact of this percentage right here because all the guys that they've gotten from the portal now have left. They didn't really ramp up. They're kind of in this weird limbo stage. They recruited well the last cycle, but they haven't had a continuity of great recruiting. And now I think it's going to bite them in the butt here. And again, the teams that have had success, like Texas and Georgia, obviously on the lower end, but look at the quantity there, 40 and 50. And go ahead.
Sheldon, take a look at Texas. Are you able to pull up their individual? I don't know if you have it there, but
I got it right
here. Pull up Texas. This is a great example because you look at like Steve Sarkisian comes in. Texas is in upheaval early on. You look at the percentages of players, but look at the last couple of years here, starting to slow down a little, starting to stabilize a bit. What's happened? They're winning. things are coming together. The program's settling a little bit. So that Texas is a good example to look at. And granted, it's just one sample, right? It's just one school I'm looking at here. But I do think that this could be a model that if things go well for Billy Napier, that's what it could look like. And we could be looking back at, those years in the 70+% range going, weren't those years crazy? Like, so the hope is you start winning and maybe it settles down a little bit.
So if we're looking at, oh, we lost Dave. If you're looking at Florida and Texas right here, right 1-2, that they're trending that way is what you're kind of you're alluding to, right?
Yeah, and I mean the thought is you got a guy like Lagway coming in, right? That he could be a transformational player within a program. Perhaps guys want to stick around that extra year, give it a shot. So even if they're on the borderline, if things aren't hopeful, Will always talks about this. I agree with this 100%. That one of the biggest things you sell in college football is hope, and if you have that hope, that exists for the players too. If they see the program going in the right direction, who do you think inside that Texas program wants to walk out that door right now after making the playoffs last year, right? So if you see the evidence and you see the progress being made on the field, it's something you want to stick around and give it a shot for. You're probably more inclined to give those guys a shot and hang around an extra year or two.
If Billy
so hopefully that's what we see at Florida.
Billy needs a guy to sell hope. I mean, I got a whole jar of it, buddy. I can sell.
Really, what this article should tell you, Shelton, is that you only need to bust this spacesuit out between 30 to 40% of the time. I'm saving you like 60% of spacesuit wearings right there.
Gators by a million is all I've kind of gathered from the first 2 pages here. We've got more to go. We got 68 more to go, boys. So I'm just telling you, I'm fire. 69. I'm math's bad. Dave, you were gonna say something before you left us. What you got in your mind?
Yeah, my computer messed up for some reason. But yeah, I mean, like if you look at the just percentages overall, too, it's like you look at the teams that are very successful, like your Alabamas, your Georgias, your Texases, you don't really see a lot of turnover from those guys because they don't really either A, have to go into the portal or the kids want to stay and play for that team. So Florida really, honestly, had an issue, obviously, with Dan Mullen players, had to get rid of those guys, maybe recruited some guys from the portal that maybe didn't even work out. We re-entered the portal there too as well. So like, the good part about Florida is they've kept most of their high school players that they recruited from high school, like the 2023 class. Yeah.
And Dave, how many like Georgia and Alabama, for example, perfect examples. What percentage of these guys going out the door are getting a tap on the shoulder at the end of the season from Kirby or Saban and saying, hey, why don't you go hit the portal? Like we got guys coming. You got guys on the high school side stacked up and lined up ready to come in too. So, yeah, I know we talk about guys leaving, but certainly there's that side of the business that you probably don't hear as much about. Is that there's de facto cuts these days with the rules. You can cut a guy. You're not taking him out of his college life anymore. He can go play at another school pretty easily. It's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah, that's the luxury of recruiting elite every year is the fact you get to pick and choose who you want to keep, and then you can tell the rest to go to the portal. And usually those percentages aren't as high as like teams that may not have recruited as well, and they say, okay, not a lot of these players are really good. I'm going to have to dip into the portal and get a lot more players. Kind of like a Florida State, as Shelton was example was, they pretty much prey on the portal because obviously they don't do really well in high school for recruiting, going 13-1, still having like the 11th ranked class. So they dip into the portal every year, which is fine. If that's your method of madness, that's cool. It's just kind of cool to like look at the percentages and see where like, where some of the elite teams are at percentage wise, and kind of like, that's kind of where you want to be as a program, I guess. But now with this instant transfer rule, you could probably see the numbers going even more crazier, especially with the way the NIL is. And now high school, allowing in Florida to benefit from NIL as well.
It's also interesting too. You see at the top of the chart at the end there that Miami's right up there with Florida. So we got that hurricane matchup right at the top of the season. Very similar dynamics within both of these programs the last couple of years. Tons of turnover. I think at one point in the magazine we do point out, and again, it was at the time of writing the magazine here. So at that time, it was 82% of the roster is now Billy Napier guys. They're guys that Billy Napier brought in. And so it's probably a very similar effect down in Coral Gables. So these teams taking the field August 31st, very much going to be the players that the two coaches brought in.
Go ahead,
Dave.
I was just going to say the other good thing is 68% production returns as well. And I think it went up a little bit when we got Badger because I think it was before Badger came in. And they count the transfer experience as well. So they count it as like a returning person. So I guess it'd be like 69 now, maybe 70.
69. What I love about this as well is something I keep referring to about Miami and what excites me about this game is this is the battle of the brothers. And what I mean by that is you've got two coaches that came in the exact same time. They've recruited against each other. They've been building very similar. They've had this damn near the same success on the football field, recruited closely. And both teams have their issues and their ability to kind of pop off and snap. The Miami doesn't play in a real conference, so they can win a lot of games because they don't play anybody. But they've got a talented line. They've got some talented areas, and then obviously Florida, we know where their strengths are. So this game excites me, but this is where, for me, again, if I'm an AD and I'm hiring between Billy or Mario, I'm taking Billy every single time. So when you ask me, like, hey, who wins this game? It's Billy, no question. And I'm not just saying it because I'm a Gator fan, partly because I'm a Gator fan, but genuinely just because of what we've seen on the paper and what's being produced. And both programs have been on similar tracks, and I think this is where Florida takes that step, is ultimately where I believe.
Well, Will had a very interesting stat about Cam Ward, Will, if you want to share that.
So his QB rating was 145.4 last year, and Tyler Van Dyke's quarterback rating was 145.6. So
same guy.
If you like how they played with Tyler Van Dyke, you're going to get about the exact same performance from Cam Ward. And, they went 7-6 last year. So, look, Florida still needs Mertz to take a step forward as well if we want to see improvement. But it feels like in many ways, it's that meme from The Office where they show it and the lady's like, it's the same picture. Like, to me, that's Cam Ward and Tyler Van Dyke. It's the same picture. You sort of think of Ward as a guy who runs all over the place. He doesn't. He's not somebody who does a ton with his legs either. So again, there's not a huge advantage to Cam Ward over Tyler Van Dyke. And, look, Miami was struggling to find a quarterback last year. And I really think they're going to be struggling in 2024 to find consistent play there as well.
7-6 in a make-believe conference. I don't see them really taking any strides this year, but